Slightly different format. I'm not going to bother sharing this video anymore because I feel there's enough people on this channel alone. So it'll be much more smooth. Like the journey of the podcast will be a lot more smoother now. And today's topic is why searching for a joint venture is a sign of scarcity. Now, why do I think that? Joint ventures are normally preached as the holy grail of doing property deals, because if you do a joint venture, you can do as many joint ventures as you possibly can get hold of, because essentially it might not be your money, it might just be your skills that you're bringing to the table. But what so many people don't seem to explain is the downsides of joint ventures. Most joint ventures you can just contract in, and this is why I think it's a poor route to take. Joining somebody who isn't going to be your business partner, who just wants to maybe put the funds together and joining, that maybe starting an SPV and linking your credit files. It's essentially a marriage, and your credit file affects their credit file affects yours. And that's what I mean when a joint venture. So the difference between a business partner is somebody who's going to be working with you in the business, doing some sort of role, potentially maybe doing the admin or the tenant fines or whatever the case may be, as opposed to a joint venture where somebody maybe is just providing the money and you're doing everything. You're finding the deal, you're managing the build and selling. When you get good at this, you'll very, very quickly realize that money is not very hard to find. It's one of the easiest things to find. The key skill, and the skill that's in real demand, is finding deals, executing them effectively, exiting the deals. There are not many people that can do that. So what do I mean by exiting the deals? I mean getting the product to market, selling the deal, or getting the rooms to market and getting them rented out, refinanced. Like, there's a whole plethora of issues and hoops to jump through that most people can't even fathom how difficult it is. You think it'd be fairly simple: buy a house, refurb, do up, sell. But there are so many more hoops and so many more levels and steps that you need to do before you get that product to market. And that is the real skill. It's not the money, because initially, if you've got no money and you're wanting to JV, you have to be really careful, because it's sort of like, it's really, really tempting to go into partnership with somebody. And if you're inexperienced and you've got the deal and they've got the money, the chances are they're in multiple deals at the same time, as opposed to just that one deal with you. And if one deal goes awry that has nothing to do with you, it can affect you and your potential future in property, because his credit file or her credit file will affect your credit file. And so that's what I mean by a joint venture: somebody who supplies the money and nothing else. You want to be able to have a clean break from people at the end of it. If it's maybe coming together to do a flip, that's a bit different, because you're going to walk away. You're not going to have a lasting relationship. Or if, as I said, if it's a business partnership where you're both going to be working in the business and potentially raising finances from outside sources, then I would recommend doing that. So due diligence on a joint venture. If you're going to go down it, which I don't think you should, because as I said previously, the ramifications of getting it wrong and that person messing up can set you back a year, just like it did for us. You need to check that person's credit file. You need to make sure there's no CCJs, because if that person has a score of 600 and you're at the 997 or 999, whatever it is, what will happen is your credit file will come crashing down. And that's exactly what happened to us. We joint ventured with somebody. We were inexperienced, didn't really know what we were doing. And the deal nearly went under because of it. We didn't do due diligence on the credit file. The person had a CCJ. We then tried to exit from our bridging on long-term commercial finance. And because a few other issues had occurred on that deal, as in we chose the wrong builder, so the build was a lot longer than it normally was, we were having to extend our bridging, which of course the costs involved in that are crippling. And we couldn't exit onto a long-term commercial product because our joint venture partner wasn't eligible for the finance. So what we had to do is basically, even though he provided all the money, we did all the work, he had to leave the company, leaving him very, very exposed, because essentially now we could just be like, I'm not paying you, and there'd be nothing he could do, and that's not fair on him. However, fortunately, he's with us, and that isn't even going to enter our mind. We're going to pay this person back. He's going to get all his money, and he's just going to get rental income, and we'll like hire him as a sort of like employee, and that's how he'll get his money out. But it's going to take a long time because of that mistake. And when you don't have a, like, if we were tied in with that person and we had a mortgage, for instance, if he didn't have that CCJ and then we went on a long-term commercial product with him, maybe with, say, Shawbrook or Interbay, and then he got a CCJ after, that will affect your credit rating because you are linked to somebody and they might come after you for the funds. Maybe he does another property deal and he does a personal guarantee. They'll come after your section of the deal. And then if you're forced to exit early and there's not enough equity in the property, then you could be forced to sell different assets to cover the loss. That is why you need to have a clean break if you're going to joint venture. And what do I mean by clean break? Where you can both walk away from the deal. There's no lasting contract. Because if things go south, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It's by the by. It depends how experienced you are and how experienced the other person is. You're going to need an exit. Be that you sell the property or you buy that person out or he buys you out, etc., or she buys you out. Make sure you have a break. And why would somebody opt for a joint venture when you can just raise finance? If you've got a deal and you're thinking, right, I need to share it. I need to give. Like I speak to people time and time and time again, and they give too much away. They give equity in these property companies that they work their blood, sweat, and tears. They give like interests in the property that they've sourced. So maybe like they'll give half of the equity of the future potential growth when they've sourced. Deals are not very easy to find. If you get in this business, you'll realize it's not the money that's the difficult thing. It's finding deals that. Crap deals are everywhere, obviously, but finding deals where you can refurb, they stack, you can have outside lending against them, so the deals can pay back the outside lending as well as the mortgage, and then at the end of it, you can get your money. There are not many deals that can do that, and people who find them tend to give too much of it away, and that's why we don't do joint ventures anymore. But if people want to work with us, they have to have something really, really, really key to what we want. For example, today I had somebody ask me to build a portfolio and joint venture with them, and I said no. I've got too much on, and the work involved isn't worth the profit at the end of it. Like, why would I spend 50% of why would I set up a new company, give 50% of it away to somebody who just puts money in when I can just raise it myself? It's not that difficult to raise finance, teach people what I do, and then use that model. Because I would only have a JV, or what I see is when people talk about JVs, when they don't think that they can raise the finance, they need to give more of it away. When in reality, you're giving the golden goose, the goose that lays the golden egg away, like just really easy without any resistance. And the only way the person today got me to work with him is I'm going to build him a portfolio completely separate so I can walk away at some point because I don't want to have too many JV partners. Is that person is going to fund all my deals. He basically give me the money to work with for a few years before I then have to go and build him a portfolio. So that's completely win-win, and that's something that I would advocate because now I'm going to get a few assets, play with this money, produce loads of rent, and then the rental income is then going to be used to build his portfolio. So essentially, I get 3 or 4 properties for nothing, and he's going to get 3 or 4. But we're separate, and that's the good thing about it. I don't need to monitor what he's doing. I don't need to worry about whether he's taking out loans or whether his credit file is not as good as mine or mine not as good as his. Because if you're in property for the long term, your credit file is like your first child. You need to look after it. Everything revolves around your credit file. And if somebody is affecting that in a negative way, it can pause your journey and it can even end you. Because say you come to the end of the 5-year product and you go onto their variable rate, which is usually quite a bit higher than the fixed return mortgages. If you can't go onto a different product, that could cost you thousands of pounds if somebody has affected your credit file. And you need to guard your credit file with a shield and sword, because once it's been hampered with or tampered with, it's very hard to recover. You need to go onto higher forms of lending to get the credit score down, so then you can get better forms of lending. So what are the alternatives to JV partners? Well, I would always suggest that you covet the skill of being able to raise finance. And it's very easy for me to sit here and say, just raise finance. But on the other end of this video, you're probably thinking, how? How the hell do I raise finance? I know nobody with money. None of my friends have money. None of my colleagues have money. Well, then what you need to do, you need to start getting yourself into the levels of society that does have money, whether that be joining a golf course or joining a really expensive gym, or get into these echelons of society, become friends with them, because you are the top 5 average of the people you spend the most time with. And when you become good at sourcing deals, when you become good at being able to, like, people see you as somebody to give money to, because they're going to get that and more back reliably, consistently, and they're not going to have to chase for the money. You will have more money than you know what to do with. I can promise you, it's so hard to believe that now as you're sat here trying to raise finance for so many property deals because you've built no credibility or whatever the case may be. So get into the habit of raising finance from everyone. You'll be surprised at where it can come from. Don't be afraid to ask, because you're not begging, you're providing a service. You're not saying, give me money, give me money. You're not. You're providing a service of being able to make that person more money. So for example, the gentleman today who is going to give us £325,000 to work with for 2.5% just because he wants to beat inflation. He had that money in a bank account and it was actually losing. So it was in one of those FTSE funds, but the equivalent of whatever country it was in. And it was losing money. It wasn't making, there was no increase in percentage. It was actually going down. So not only was inflation eating away at the buying power of that money, the person who was managing the wealth for the fund, it was actually losing value. So now he gets to park it with us for a few years at a modest rate where it beats inflation, and that's all he wants. And there are hundreds and hundreds of people that are in that position also. And I spoke to a gentleman. I went to a property development tour of a gentleman. I won't name him, but he said he was really pleasantly surprised at how many offers of finance he had. And that's because he had the golden goose. He hadn't realized yet that he was the one that had all the power. He had the deal that was going to be a no money left in deal, which there aren't many of those about. There are plenty of them if you build the connections, but when you're first getting in, they're quite hard to find. And all the investors around him knew that, but he didn't. So he nearly gave away a second charge on the property, which he didn't have to do. It could have been fairly disastrous because the exit would have been a lot harder by having a first charge and a second charge on a property. So again, I sort of went off on a tangent there. But the crux of it is, don't JV. There's no need to give so much of your economic activity away. There's no point. All the bollocks of you'll go far alone or farther with 3 or 4, just ignore it. It's not true. You want business partners, not JV partners. Bringing cash into the deal is the lowest common denominator. Initially, you might think, wonderful, I've raised 100K, but you're going to do that over and over and over and over again in property. It's quite easy to do. What you want to do is get business partners, not JVs, not joint ventures, business partners, people who are going to, when the planning fails or when the conditions need to be discharged or when the tenant trashes it, you want people in there helping you solve that problem. Those are the people that are worth their weight in gold, and they're the people who will enable you to go further than just 1 or 2 steps, not the people that just bring the money. So in summary, don't give too much away. You're going to hear joint venture partners be the be all and end all from all the trainers, because it's easier to sell the dream to somebody who doesn't have any money and say, listen, you're going to go find these people that have money, bring them deals, and they're going to do deals with you. And in some cases that happens, but you're giving too much away. You really are. Like the future capital appreciation of any property, giving 50% of that away just because they provide the money, when there's infinite supply. Like money isn't real. It's just numbers in a computer. You can raise it. It's just playing the game that is fiscal, reserve fraction, whatever it is. Money is like lent off money. So a bank gets £100,000 and they can lend out like £900,000, and that's how money gets created. Like it's all fake. So don't place too much value on it. Obviously understand the game and know that you'll lose everything if you don't keep the people who lend you the money supplied with their interest. But get used to raising it. Get over your ego. You're going to get rejected lots of times, but at the end result, after a couple of months of consistently trying to raise finance, you're going to get reference experience from everyone you speak to, and then you'll develop the skill of being able to raise finance really easy. You'll understand what type of person requires what type of pitch, and then there's no need for you to joint venture because you can just keep raising finance and do the deals yourself. And most people will be fairly happy just to be involved and learn from you, so they themselves can become people who can find a deal, take the deal to the planners or the builders, see it through to fruition, bring it to market, and then be able to tenant in it and refinance. Like, that is a really, really difficult skill. And I see so many people giving that away too soon. And that's my take on joint ventures and why it's a sign of scarcity to try and joint venture. I think you should always try to raise finance as opposed to joint venture, and link yourself with other people. Because one mistake, you're overexposing yourself. One mistake from any of your joint venture partners, it can affect the whole chain. It's like an STD. Like, you think you're sleeping with one person, but you're not. You're getting into bed with every person that person is joint ventured with, and then every person that person is joint ventured with. And it's sort of like a spider that the two centerpieces just branch out, and suddenly your credit file is linked with like dozens and dozens and dozens of people. And all it takes is for one person to become infected with a CCJ, and that means a county court judgment. That's not an STI, and it will affect the whole chain. Everyone's credit file will go down, and then once that tap turns off, you have no exit. You're restricted to flips, lease options, buying properties in cash, and it will seriously hamper your ability to get finance and grow your property portfolio. If you have any questions or you wish to disagree with, and you think joint ventures are fantastic, you want to champion joint ventures, you want to be, yeah, they're great, I've got multiple joint ventures, they're all fantastic. I'm not saying that my way is the right way. This is just my opinion and why I think searching for joint venture partners is a sign of weakness. After doing one myself and seeing the pitfalls versus the advantages, so the pros and cons, I think there are way more cons than there are pros. Like, money is everywhere. It's so easy to raise if you have the right mindset. You develop the skill of being able to connect with people on a more deeper level rather than just the superficial, "Hi, how are you?" blah blah blah. You'll go further. Develop that skill, raise that finance, do the deals yourself, and also be really loud about what you do. Don't worry about the sort of the success or the quality of your content. Just being really loud and getting your personality out there, people will see it, and then they're much more open to giving you finance if they think you're honest and they think you'll do anything if the deal goes wrong. Like, you won't abandon the deal. You need to be somebody that has to have sort of like that sort of that grit, that ability to get in the trenches, plug the holes, and see the deal through to the end. Because I'm fairly confident a lot of people with our joint venture partners, if they were involved in that situation, would have crumbled and they would have gone under. It was an absolute complete debacle. What happened is we picked a bad builder, and I was going on some courses, learning about the building trade. And as I was coming back from these courses, like loaded with this knowledge, I was discovering, I was like, are you sure you're meant to concrete push fit pipes into the ground because they need room to expand and contract because they're plastic? And he's like, yes, don't worry. And I'd go back and I'd learn that wasn't the thing to do. So I'm thinking in the future now, I'm preparing myself. We're building a war chest. The pipes are going to crack under the floor and it's going to flood for sure. And lo and behold, that happened. So that delayed the works. Then the joint venture partner's credit file was a bit messed up. So then we couldn't exit onto the long-term commercial product. So that was like the second time we extended the bridging. And then so we were forced to get revalued before the property had finished as well. So we got downvalued on the property, and it really nearly we went under because of it. But fortunately, we were able to raise finance to plug the gaps, and because we had that skill, it wasn't too much of a worry because it cash flows nicely. And each year we're borrowing less and less and less against that property because the cash flow plays off the principal. And that is why I would never JV. You need to be in control of your credit file. You need to be in control of your exit, because if you haven't got anywhere to exit, then you're going to go under. They're going to recall the asset. They're going to sell it through fire sale prices, and you're going to be left with a bill. Right, thank you for listening. I know it's a late one today. I was hoping to do it a bit earlier, but we had a bit of an issue with tenant check-in and some keys. Right, but that's all from me. If you've got any questions, or alternatively, if you want to speak to me face-to-face and talk about how to raise finance, we're doing a development tour on the 22nd of June. There's a very, very few tickets left because we're only going to accept 30 maximum people. All the Wealth Dragon tickets have gone, and we've got 6 left of the paid ones. So if you want to join us, hop along on the link under the title Development Tour, and you can have a chat with myself, my business partner. We'll talk about the pros and the cons of various strategies, because we've done a few of them now of raising finance. It's something that we're pretty good at. And you'll never hear the excuse of, oh, it's hard to raise finance from us, or we're really struggling, because it just doesn't exist in our dictionary when it comes to raising finance. It's not hard. You just have to be consistent, keep doing it, and just believe that it is possible and you're worthy of it, and it will happen as long as you're taking the action, and that comes through across in your body language. Right, thank you for your time. I'm going to go watch Game of Thrones now.